Chris Karalis is with us. And Chris is always leading edge. He's always got something going on that's leading edge. And when Chris and I met each other 100 years ago in the mortgage world,
yep.
You were doing technology as much as anything else.
Yep.
And started doing some real green stuff for a long time.
Yep.
And now you're out helping people that have serious debt problems.
Yes. Yeah.
Explain that a little bit.
So, after what you just said, I mean, you listen and you're like, did you have a good time? Like, this is like the worst trip ever. You know what you're just saying. And this is like the light at the end of the tunnel is the way to look at it. But ultimately, a lot of people are in a bad place financially, as you know. Credit card rates are up. People are in a position where they can't pay their bills.
Right.
And I'm talking to clients that are on a daily where they had a $10,000 credit card limit. They have great credit and they have $3,000, $4,000 on their credit card. And now the credit card company has now cut the limit to $3,000, $4,000. And now they're at 100% utilization. And now they're at a position where they have to get a second credit card and they can't get a card, or they get a second credit card. Now the rates are higher. And it's this.
Well, something that's kind of we had Sarah Perkins was on with us yesterday, and she's with our friends over at Blue Water Credit. And, we were talking about credit ratings and credit scores and FICO scores. And these credit companies, from what you just said, are sabotaging the consumer.
Yes.
Right? Because if you have a $10,000 credit card and you've got a $3,000 used,
yes,
you've got a 30% utilization rate.
Your credit's great.
Which is great credit.
Yep.
Now you take and cut the limit to $3,000. You're at 100% utilization rate.
Correct.
And you probably just lost 40 points on your credit score.
Yeah, if not more.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And this has happened to Americans across the nation right now.
Right. I mean, that's just so they're really just, stiffing the people, which, this is the credit companies doing that. It doesn't surprise me when I see the credit bureaus do it. And I never ask my guests to get into this conversation with me because it is my opinion. And just my opinion, and I'm right, that the credit card bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, are incentivized to stiff you, the consumer, and have your credit scores lower. Why? Because they make more money that way. So if you owe anything on credit cards, you go outside to your mail, and you're getting solicitations all the time from companies that want to do debt consolidation work.
Right.
Debt consolidators are not buying the credit information of the person that has a 780, 800, 825 FICO score.
More or less. I agree with that.
Right? They're buying the guy that's got a 450, a 500, 550, 600, because those people need help.
Correct.
You're not spending money on somebody that doesn't need your services.
Correct.
Right? I mean, probably on your call list today is not Warren Buffett.
Probably not.
Right? Because he doesn't need cash.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Shohei's not on your call list.
Right.
Right? He doesn't need that cash.
Right.
The guy that's having trouble and he's buying dog food instead of ground beef, he needs help.
Correct.
Right? We're going to talk more about how Chris can help when we come back. Continue our conversation. We are chatting. Chris Karalis, Advantage First Financial is the company. And there's Chris, I'll put it this way. It's a shame there's a big need for your services.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like an ambulance. No one wants,
everyone, people need them.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that we do, but right now I look at it, you're kind of like David fighting Goliath.
Yeah.
Because I look at some people and I hear folks saying, well, I had a 9.99 interest rate and now it's up to 29.9.
Right. Right. And that's becoming more and more common. And you got to think of it as well. There's $1 trillion now in credit card debt. And think about daily compounding interest on $1 trillion.
Yeah, that's massive.
It's massive.
Well, think about daily compounding interest on $36 trillion. Oh, no, that's our national debt, which we get to pay that, right? So, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But so how do you help folks?
So unfortunately for a lot of Americans right now, they're at a position where they don't know what to do. The credit cards are maxed. The limits have been cut on the cards. They have no way to survive.
Right.
And so right now, a lot of Americans are thinking about bankruptcy and credit counseling. And unfortunately, there's a lot of ramifications. I can never say that word. Ramifications with that. And one, obviously, could put you in a bad spot for 7 to 10 years on your credit report.
Sure.
So what we do when we've been helping Americans is what is called debt resolution.
Okay.
Now, debt resolution, and we'll talk about this because there was a black eye, something similar about 15 years ago now,
Sure. Yeah.
which was called as debt settlement.
Right.
Yeah. And what it allows the consumer a way to negotiate their debt with the creditor. And we provide a service to do that for them. It typically can save the consumer up to 50% on the dollar.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And massive. And it can and does stop the daily compounding interest.
That's another big one.
Yes.
Because, you look at it and you say, if you're making your minimum payments on your credit cards, you're probably looking at about 300 years to pay them off.
Sometimes, yeah, I've seen consumers up to 20, 30 years. And the best thing is any consumer right now could go look at the back of their statement. It will tell them how many years to pay it off.
Well, you think about it at 29%. So you see some of these at 29.99 is what I see on some of them that I'm counseling folks on. That means their debt is doubling every other year.
Yeah. It's mind
right. So if you've got $10,000 in debt and you're just making a minimum payment, you're looking at that doubling probably by this time in 2026.
Right. I want to go on the record as saying this. Credit cards are designed to never be paid off.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're designed to always have a minimum payment. And if you think about it, it's brilliant.
Sure.
Yeah, for the credit card company.
Yeah, these credit card companies are making a boatload of money that way.
Yes. Yeah, $1 trillion in debt. So yeah.
Right. So how does this work? I mean, if I go and call you,
yeah,
am I setting myself up for a lawsuit from my creditors?
So lawsuits can happen, and I have to explain that, but we have the guidance and direction and hopefully keep you out of that. Sometimes if you have a large credit card debt, $25,000, typically where we see it, but it can be lower. You can be sued by a creditor if you choose not to pay your debt.
Sure.
But
they want their money back.
Right. But we are resolving the debt. You are paying back your debt with us. So you have to keep that in mind while you're
So what's the motivation of the credit card company or the debt or the creditor? If you're trying to resolve the problem, the best they can hope for if they go to court is to resolve the problem.
Correct.
So you're helping them not have that extra expense.
Correct. And go through the motions.
And now I wouldn't say this out loud because we only have 7 listeners, so we're okay. If you talk to a bankruptcy attorney, what are they going to tell you? If you've got $30, $40, $50, $60,000 in debt, they're going to probably say bankruptcy is an option.
Right.
I'm not giving legal advice, but they'll probably say bankruptcy is an option. If you call your credit card company and say, I just spoke to an attorney and they said it might be an option for me to go bankrupt.
Right.
Or maybe I can call Chris.
Right. Yeah.
Then Chris becomes a hero for both sides.
Yeah. And I have actually referrals from bankruptcy attorneys and CPAs. So to give you an idea. So I'm getting that type of direction as well. And sometimes we're in a position where I have to send the client the other way as well. So
there's a time for I mean, those I'm not saying those services are great. I'm not saying those services are bad. Right. There is a time and place for everything.
Right.
But from a moral standpoint, Chris, you and I go back long enough.
Yep.
We both were dealing with the financial crisis.
Oh yeah.
In 2008, 2009, when big banks would fold but tell the little consumer, you can't go and file bankruptcy. You can't go and get a short sale or renegotiate your mortgage.
Right.
But they were doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is, and I'm not saying that we're in the same situation as we were then.
It's similar.
But there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Right. I don't see the real estate crash because there's so much equity.
Right.
But a lot of people are hurting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when credit card, like you said, the number one complaint I have from my clients that call in is my credit cards were here, typically like anywhere from 9 to 20%, and now they're at 30%. And
so they've raised the rate, they've lowered the availability.
Yes.
And they want you to just take it.
Correct.
And so now, and I'm going to throw this out again as a consumer advocate. I do that on Ron Siegel Radio all the time. If you go and try and call your credit card company, they likely is that they'll work with you. But the thing is, how much clout do you have? Right? You're John Smith calling into Capital One, and you've got one debt, and their job is to see how ignorant you are and how much they can get from you. That's their job.
Correct.
Now, when you call and you talk to somebody like Chris, okay, Chris isn't Capital One, I'm assuming.
Right.
You're not as big as them.
Right.
But you still got a big portfolio.
Correct.
And you've got negotiators who have relationships with somebody there. It's not John Smith calling in.
That is correct. And typically when we settle a debt, and we'll just use the Capital One because we're talking about, and we do settle with Capital One every single month.
And we're not saying anything's wrong with Capital One.
Right.
We just use them as an example.
Correct. But typically, and this is actually a conversation I've seen literally on a Monday where, John will call Mike and say, from our back end to Capital One and say, hey,
so we've got two back ends talking to each other.
But hey, John, did you see the game? No. How was your daughter? How was the birthday party? Hey, what do you got today? We have $5.7 million today. We're looking to settle. Can you do it for about 47 cents? Oh man, we can't do that, but we could do 48. Are you interested? And that's the power, because it's a large amount of volume and they're willing to get that off their books.
Sure. And it becomes better for the creditor.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you why it's better for the creditor when we come back. Continuing our conversation, Chris Karalis is with us. Advantage First Financial is the name of the company. Chatting about resolving your debt. And I'm going to share something with you as we chat with Chris. Lending institutions have something called a reserve they have to have. If they have a performing debt, the reserve for the lending institution is significantly lower than the reserve required for non-performing debts, for people that are not making their payments. So think about this concept. If you go to a company if you can't afford to make your credit card payments, your auto payments, your whatever payments you have, can't afford to make them. That's called a non-performing debt, and it hurts the lending institution. In the last segment, Chris spoke about the idea of his back office calling the lender, the financial institution back office, making a deal to get this back on track. That gets it back into being a performing debt. May not be the full amount,
right?
But it's performing.
Right.
Saves a lot of money.
Right.
And it does. So you save money, and it's a win for the creditor.
Correct.
Right.
They get the debt resolved. They get it off their books. Yeah, it is. It's a win-win for everyone.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Yes.
And the other part of it is if it's a collection company. So again, hypotheticals. I'm not just throwing things out in the air. Capital One has a debt with you for $25,000. They say, okay, we're not going to get paid. They sell it to collection agency X.
Right.
They sell it $5,000 maybe, 10
Sure.
cents on the dollar,
Yeah.
20 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
So if they sell it for 20% of that, $25,000, 20% of my math's right, that's 5,000. Now Chris's company comes in and says, I'll give you 47 cents. Okay, I can't do the math on that. I'm going to say 50 cents.
Yeah, sure.
So they had $5,000 that they paid for it, and now you settle it $12,500. Is the collection company unhappy about that? They're happy.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But the average Joe doesn't get that accomplished.
Right.
A company that's doing, because you made a comment in the last segment, you guys are calling and saying, okay, I got $5 million to settle.
Yeah.
You're bundling it.
Correct.
A percentage of those people are not going to pay the bill.
Right.
Right?
Right.
A percentage of them are going to pay the bill.
Yeah.
It's all planned.
Yes. Yes. And the best news is for people to realize, I don't want to think this is, I don't want to go through collections. No, we are not we're not a collection company. We are a debt resolution company, and we're going to get you, you're going to be talking right to the creditor directly. And the best news about this, Ron, is to think about this. If you have $1,000 in credit card debt, that's going to take you 17 years to pay off. That's your minimum payment. Here's the good news. We might be able to resolve this debt for you in 60 months or less, probably for about $500. And that would be your new payment.
Wow.
So we're putting a lot, and that's
so it's 60 much less, $500. You're doing the payment based on a $500 balance.
correct.
You said it was $1,000 card.
Yeah.
So you're not making $500 a month payments. It's five.
Well, no. What I'm saying is if your minimum payments were $1,000.
Oh, if your minimum payments.
Yeah. So we're talking maybe 50, 60, 70,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you're going to pay that for 17 years.
Right.
If not longer.
Now I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying.
We could typically resolve that in 60 months or less with the creditors.
How long is it going to take you to resolve this stuff, Chris?
Typically 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months for resolution.
Yeah, for resolution when we get that set up with the creditor. Typically 3 to 6 months, and you're typically completely out of debt in 60 months or less.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's this going to do to my credit score?
So initially, unfortunately, most of my consumers are not in a good position with credit. So it's kind of a moot point. But those that still have good credit in this, they are going to take a short-term negative effect on their credit.
So if you have good credit, it's going to hurt you. If you have bad credit, you're already there.
Correct.
Right?
But there's no long-term negative effect on credit. It's not a bankruptcy. It is not credit counseling. There's no public record. So typically our consumers at about the 6-month mark start seeing improvements on their credit.
Because they're making payments again.
Correct. And the accounts are getting resolved.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So now the accounts can be closed to paid to with zero balance. And then once that's done, obviously it's a positive on the credit report.
So then it shows that it was paid in full.
Yes.
Because you've negotiated. Now you're negotiating with all of my creditors at once, or is it each one individually, or how does that work?
Typically, the answer is yes to both. Everyone's situation is different, but typically we try and get everything negotiated within the first 3 to 6 months.
Okay. So I might see some of them that are negotiated real quick.
I've seen them in 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it all depends on the creditor and the condition of the account. But when we get a phone call with a consumer, we always say typically 3 to 6 months. We don't want to set a false expectation, but it usually.
Okay, so here's the biggie.
Uh-huh.
What's this going to cost me?
Here's the best thing about it. So this is where you got to look at it. If we were to do a 60-month, okay, now there is a fee that's built in, and it's built into your payment. Typically, it's right around anywhere from 5.5 to 6.5% interest. Okay. The way to look at it, if you were to amortize it, but it's about 25% of the total debt and fees. So that's a way to look at it.
And so what happens then if you go and settle this at, and I don't know the quickest way for us to do this analysis, Chris.
Uh-huh.
So I've got $50,000 in credit card debt.
Yes.
And you get that settled for $22,000.
Yep.
And I'm going to pay $22,000, and I'm going to pay that over a 60-month period.
Yep.
And I'm paying you guys a percentage over that period of time.
Correct.
Is that included in the $22,000?
It's all included in there. Yeah, everything's included in that. And we give you a breakdown on it. So the debt, you got to realize
So it doesn't matter if I pay you all at one time or if I pay you over 60 months.
The good news is there is no prepayment penalty. So
if I go and refinance my house and I can get $22,000 off of that refi,
you could.
I could pay that whole thing off and be done in.
You could in fact do that. Yes. Yeah.
45 days.
Yeah. So the fees we would actually disclose the fees. Every situation is different. So if you had $50,000, the fee, the way to look at it is, for sake of argument, if your payment was $1,000, sake of argument, and that's a monthly payment, realistically, you'd be looking to a payment probably near $500 a month. That would include all fees, all costs, everything together. We would give a total breakdown in that.
So it's all disclosed, and it's half, give or take. I mean, we're not going to hold it exactly, but half of what you're paying right now.
In most cases, yes.
Gives you a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
Might be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, and have cash in your pocket.
Don't go spending it again, because you and I have seen that way too many times.
Well, the funny thing is, most of my clients start getting credit card offers again within the first year.
Don't do that. We've seen that before. I was in the subprime world, helping people save their houses, and say, don't build up your credit card debt, because we're going to give you a 2-year loan or a 3-year loan, and don't go back in debt. Call them back in 2 years, and they're in debt again.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to learn to change your habits. This is a tool. Right. And it's all a matter of where you want to go with the tool. If you want more information on this, if you want to meet Chris, give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Be happy to put you in touch with Chris Karalis and his team over there at Advantage First Financial, and maybe they'll give you a little breathing room.